Welcome to Conversations with Healers, a podcast and video interview series that features intimate, soulful, and cozy conversations with self-healers and healers. Healer to healer, we dive into all aspects of self-healing and healing, and being and becoming a healer. I am Damla. I am a healer and the host of this podcast, and I can't wait for you to listen to this conversation. If you are new to this podcast, please take a moment to subscribe so that you can be aware of new episodes. I also invite you to visit adropofom.com, adropofom.com, where I share a lot of free resources for self-healing and healing, and you can take a free quiz to find out what your energetic wounds are and how they may show up in your life. Discovering what your wounds are is the first step in healing them. I hope you enjoy this episode. There is one more thing I would like to share with you before you listen to this episode. I created a wonderful container to help you heal your energetic wounds and activate the infinite light and potential of your inner children. It is a crystal energy healing membership called Chakra Bliss Vault. Every month you will receive 3 new crystal healing sessions. Plus, you'll immediately have access to my entire energy healing recording library when you sign up. The membership is really affordable and will continue to be so. You can find out more about it at adropofom.com, adropofom.com. I invite you to make healing your energetic wounds and connecting with your inner children a priority and invest in your well-being by becoming a Chakra Bliss Vault member. Hello everyone, this is Damla with A Drop of Om, and today I have a very special guest, Karen. Hi and welcome.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
So good to have you. So Karen Miller is a self-identified green witch, eclectic pagan, certified moonologer, Reiki Master Teacher, Animist, Shamanic Practitioner, Ordained Minister, Equestrian, mom to a human daughter and many animals. So welcome, Karen. I'm so excited to dive into all of this.
Yes, me too. Thank you again.
Yeah. Can you give us a little taste of your story, like what has led you to doing and being what you do and who you are at this point in your life?
Yeah. Well, I think that one of the most common questions I get is, how did you become a witch, or how did you know you were a witch? And I took a really big detour to it. Looking back now, I think I knew um, well before I actually accepted that that is indeed what I was. So at one time, I was, I was raised in a very mainstream religion kind of environment, and at one time, I was very active in my church, and I didn't get a lot of the answers to questions that I had. And I was always one of those very curious children. I always had more questions than answers that people had, right? So I asked a lot of questions, and I didn't get the kinds of answers that I felt good about. So I decided that I would take on a journey of exploring world religions on my own. So I did that for a very long time. And I read every text I could get my hands on, every obscure religion that I found. I was, very interested in learning all of the things that I could possibly learn. And the day that I picked up a book on green witchcraft, it was like remembering something I already knew instead of learning something new. And so I'm like, this is it. This is who I am. And it just resonated so deeply with me, almost like it was my DNA, my birthright, a remembrance of some kind from ancestors or another life. I don't know exactly, but it was just something I knew already.
That sounds so beautiful. Um, I just want to say before we even go deeper, like I love that when I went into your website, you're like the first thing that greets you is you say, "Welcome, green witches." It's like you know how to greet people. And you and I had talked about this before briefly, which is this journey around really owning what your soul expression is. And may it be calling yourself a green witch or being a green witch or any other way that your healing gifts come online. So what is a green witch exactly? How do you define that?
Well, everyone is going to have a little bit of a different take, but here is how I see it. So, Green Witch is basically someone who puts nature at the center, the heart of their practice. Having that deep reverence for Mother Earth and all of her beings is at the core of everything that I believe, everything that I do. So, in that regard, I might well be called an environmentalist or a conservationist or a tree hugger or any one of those things, that kind of gives you that idea that we're very oriented to the natural world and the environment, taking care of it, feeling like it's our job, and that it's our responsibility to take care of it.
Yeah, I love that. And I think what I'm hearing in that from you is, which is what drove me to you, and which is what draws me to like a lot of the people I interview, is there's something about that, however you name it, something that lights up your soul in what you're describing, um, which to me is beautiful, which is why what I work to be and embody in my my own way with crystal healing, inner child healing, and writing. Um, I'd love to hear more about. I know you teach about this, and I know you practice this in your own life too. Can you tell us about the wheel of the year and what it is, how that works?
Sure. So the Wheel of the Year is kind of my sacred framework and the sacred framework for a lot of witches of any kind. And I think it kind of is important to realize here at this point of our conversation that the term witch, it's not used as universally as it once was. Now there's all these different types of witches, things like sea witches and green witches and kitchen witches and all of these other things. And they're all valid, but at the heart, we're all witches. And so for most of us, this Wheel of the Year is a universal concept. And even other types of practices also kind of have the same sort of structure. You'll find it within shamanic practices and so forth too. But for me, this is how I go through each and every year. I walk through the Wheel of the Year with intention, aligning myself, if you will, to the seasons, the cycles, the things that are changing. And it is in my, in the way that I think of it, it's a way to kind of reawaken that wonder that we all had as children at things like the sight of the first flowers in the spring. I mean, I'm so excited when I see the crocus pop up. It's like seeing old friends, right? Or when the geese are flying over, I'm always sure to look up and greet them. Or when they migrate in the fall, I always wish them, safe travel, that sort of thing. It's being very in tune with what's happening in the natural world around us. And, for a lot of years, I was like so many other people, um, you know, everything in the natural world was just kind of like background noise to me. I was busy, I was focused, I was living the life that I was essentially told I should live, right? It wasn't really the life I wanted. It was the one that I'd been given the recipe for as a young person. And graduating from high school, I was given this whole recipe to follow. You go to college, you get the degree, you get the job, you do the thing, right? Well, that it didn't lead me to what I would call joy or happiness in my life. As a matter of fact, doing the things that everyone told me that I should be doing was actually kind of destroying me from the inside. I was depressed and I had anxiety, and I felt miserable every day when I got up and I went to my job that I hated. I think a lot of people do this, right? We're told what we should do, what we should want, and how we should be, without regard for what we really feel in our heart, in our soul, kind of like what you were saying earlier about something that lights you up. So I got a degree in accounting, and nothing about accounting lights me up. It may pay the bills, but it doesn't light me up. So I really kind of drudged through a lot of time, not really paying any mind to the world around me, and I had become very narrow in what I was experiencing. So once I was able to kind of fling open those doors to the natural world, my soul started to kind of expand, and I began to heal. I actually hit a low point about 10 years ago where I got so depressed and so sure that I just was stuck somewhere that I couldn't get out of, that I actually considered taking my own life. I was really at a low point, and an inch at a time, I was able to use nature and things like journaling and healing creativity and gratitude. Gratitude is so powerful. I think that people can change their lives with that alone. But I started to infuse all of these things and connecting with Mother Earth and nature in a very intentional way. And so for me, it actually became a way to not only live, but to heal. And the more I healed, the more alive I felt. And the more alive I felt, the more excited I became about everything in life. And today, I call it seeing the world through the eyes of an artist. So when I walk out into the woods, I see things that other people might overlook, like the tiniest little speck of moss on a branch, or the way that a leaf curls up in the end, or something like that, right? I notice all of these details because to me these are made of pure wonder.
Oh, I love that so much. I think I want to say for the listeners who may not be watching this, like you're someone like you exude vitality out of your video. So I'm so glad that you just listened within, which is the same guidance for all of us moving towards what lights you up. I think in to add to what you just said, which is beautiful, you said something about seeing the world through the artist's eyes, which is your definition of witch. I think for me it's similar. It is for me, as an Aquarius, as an air sign. For me, it's like being aware as I sit here or as I walk that there are so many other dimensions to this. There is so many things unseen and undecipherable with our two eyes, but we can feel into them, we can know into them. And there's a soul presence here in us that connects us to the soul of all things. So to me, that would be the definition of the art, the witch, or the art of the witch, which witchcraft or witchery, however you call it. Which I feel like you're describing, like when you have that multidimensional awareness, you see things a little differently. You can perceive things a little differently. It adds color, depth, height, width to your experience of life. Um, so this path that I feel we are on, and so many of the listeners are on, you talk a little bit about this, but can you talk about the part about remembering who you are and the ups and downs of that
Yeah,
path?
yeah. Yeah, first of all, let me just say what you just said is so beautiful. I was like smiling all the time because I love that, we can define witchcraft in a different way today, as it's been vilified for so long. And, we all carry that little bit of witch wound. So we're a little reluctant sometimes to embrace that part of ourselves, even when we feel it strongly, because, I mean, why wouldn't we? History has proven to us that it might not be such a great idea, right? But now we're starting to come to this place where we can, and we have the ability to express that part of ourselves. And I love that. But as far as the embracing who we really are and what our soul really wants for us, boy, that is a tough journey sometimes, because there are so many influences. And, this is a very loud world that we live in. And for people like me who are very sensitive, I identify as an empath. I'm very energy sensitive. I find it easy to take on other people's stuff, right? And I can get overwhelmed fairly easily. So for a long time, I really thought there was something wrong with me, because people would say to me, well, why can't you just be happy? And what they meant was, why can't you just do what everyone else does and be fine with it? Why do you have to do something different? And so they would make me feel like there was something wrong with me for wanting something that they didn't want, or that they thought I shouldn't want. So moving away from all of this stuff, all of these shoulds, was the first piece for me. And it was hard. It was really hard. You're fighting against other people's judgments and opinions. And if you've come from a world like I did, where, I was raised in this very narrow environment where things were done a certain way and you just did it that way, you didn't question it, you just did it. You become, you know, kind of like this outlier that you didn't sign up for, and you don't really know what to do with all of those feelings. And today when people ask me, well, how do you just announce to other people that you're a witch? Because I am a witch, but I can't tell my brother, mother, sister, parent, guardian, whatever it happens to be, that I'm a witch, because they won't accept it. I often say to them, there are ways that you can make it a little easier, but there's always going to be that struggle, because people just don't understand. So my first bit is educate, educate them about what it actually means to walk this path. And once they see what it really means, as opposed to what they think it means, they're probably going to be a lot more open to it. Now, will that, work for everyone? No, it probably won't. But to get it right with yourself is probably going to take a little bit of time, before you can actually get it right with everyone else, so to speak. So starting inside, starting with you, is where you kind of have to really embrace these ideas, what it feels like, and you have to get a little bit comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Absolutely. I hear all of what you're saying. I, being an empath and intuitive and a sensitive person, all of the the above, and identifying as a witch, more and more so lately. What I have find for me is not necessarily bringing it out as an idea, but bringing my witchness into the room as a posture. Like when I'm listening to someone intently and presently, I'm healing them, and they may be aware of it, they may not be aware of it. Doesn't matter. I am still doing my witchiness. It's just me, it's who I am. And that presence, that knowing, okay, I don't necessarily need to prove myself, I don't need to explain myself, but I can be who I am in this position, in this place. That has been my go-to. And the other thing that's coming up with this is, which I'm going to completely blank on right now. it's the it's this idea that oh yes, I remember it. So one of my mentors, Sheila Haidt, used to tell the story that one of her students she's an intuitive arts teacher, would come to her and they would say something like, oh, how am I going to explain to my family that I'm doing this and this, that I'm reading tarot or whatever? I'm doing all these weird things. And Sheila would go, honey, they already know. They they already know that you're weird and you're you, and they already know. You don't need to explain anything. They know who you are. But um, anyways, I want to jump to a little bit of a different direction and talk about horses and your connection with horses and the magic and the medicine in that.
Well, horses are probably one of my favorite things in the world to talk about. So this, is definitely a welcome topic. So I started riding horses in 1985, and I was one of those kids that I was just born with it, right? I mean, I never didn't ask for a pony at Christmas or on my birthday, and it was just something that I always wanted. I always wanted these things in my life, these beautiful creatures. And growing up in a subdivision, it was just something I couldn't have. We didn't have the room, and I came from a big family, so there wasn't a lot of extra money for things like that. So I didn't have the opportunity until I was 18. I was in college, and they offered it as a non-credit course. And so I signed up after I spoke to my college advisor, who it turns out was actually a horsewoman, and she encouraged me to do it. So, I mean, talk about things just coming together, right? And I was hooked right from the very first time that I ever swung a leg over a horse. And I started out riding in a very formal type environment, with an instructor and taking lessons. And I started out with riding hunt seat, which is when you train horses up to jump over fences. I'm sure you've probably seen it, kind of like what the hunt fields used to be like when they would go out and chase foxes and things like that, right? So it's kind of modeled after that kind of riding. Then I found dressage, and I became completely and hopelessly in love with it. And it is, for anyone who's listening that doesn't know, it's kind of been described as ballet on horseback. So it's kind of a very um, it's done in patterns. A dressage test is done in a pattern, and it's based on the quality of the movements. And the movements are very fancy kind of movements, where the horse will move sideways, or they like trot in place, and things like that. Right? It's all very beautiful. And so I became hopelessly addicted to horses and dressage. And so I did that for many, many years. And now I actually have a trail horse. I've switched gears, and I have a trail horse. So now we're kind of exploring a whole other way to enjoy horses. But the healing that they have provided to me over the last almost 4 decades, I guess it's been now, has been so multidimensional. They really have healed my world, body, mind, and spirit. There's a connection that we develop as riders to our horses that goes beyond what I think you can even really define in words. There's just this knowing that you develop after you spend a very long time with an animal in that partnership. And that's really what it takes, is partnership. You have to develop this partnership. And if you've ever seen any of the little funny things that they have on the internet that circulate, sometimes it'll say, riding a horse is like riding a bike that can make bad decisions. There are things like that they post these funny things about, but it's actually true. So you have to learn communication, and you have to be able to communicate with someone in a very nonverbal way. And I think for me, what that has done over the years is to really heighten my awareness of energies and be able to make the conversation happen. Now, about 1995 or 6, I took a class in animal communication, telepathic animal communication. And I do use that too. And that has become a very important part of the communication that I have with my animals, and the energy, the nonverbal communication. I mean, it's just this wonderful thing, right? And they add so much to our lives, as anybody who has animals in their lives can attest. And I think the bigger the animal, the the bigger the commitment, the connection becomes, and they become, truly like something that, um, is kind of like on your advisory board, right? You look to them for guidance, for wisdom.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I mean, talk about being connected to nature. That's it right there. That partnership that you mentioned. And I imagine, like, as you're speaking, what's coming to me is um, that bond with the animal, something you can't control, but something you can look at with awe and respect and love. It's like a connection with an inner child part of yourself because they embody a lot of those elements of pureness of love, the innocence, and the like being the nature in you. Um, so that's very, very beautiful to me. And I love that you mentioned the as the animal gets bigger, because then it's not about control, but it's about that communication and connection and bond you create, cultivating that. That's so, so beautiful.
Yeah, and it is really true because I mean, the reality is that horse outweighs me by 10 times. So, I mean, I really am, foolish if I think that I truly can control it on that level. But what you do is you develop that partnership, and there is where you find the control. And I think it's not so much about control as it is, again, it's this partnership, and it becomes a willing, cooperative kind of thing. And I think that for a lot of us, we have relationships in our lives where we do try to exert that kind of control. And of course, what happens? The other person will just push back, and we never develop that kind of bond as a result. So horses can really teach us a lot about creating those kind of bonds and those kind of partnerships. And I mean, they're just such wonderful, understanding, beautiful creatures that, I mean, they just add so much to our lives. I recently actually lost one of my dear old horses. He was 34. He passed 2 weeks ago, and we'd been together for more than 12 years. I rescued him from starvation. When he came to me, he was just kind of a fur and fungus covered skeleton, and I mean, his the light had gone out in his eyes. He was very defeated looking, and I took one look at him. I hadn't seen him prior to saying that I would take him in, and so I took one look at him when he got here, and I said, boy, I don't know, buddy. I'm not sure what I can do here. I'm going to do everything I can to give you a good life. And if I can't give you a good life, then I'm going to give you a good death. And 2 weeks ago, I had to make good on that promise. And, it's the most heartbreaking part of having animals in our lives, but it's also our final gift to them. And I believe that they pay us back. You know what I mean? I think that they're there when it's our turn. So it's always been my belief that, they'll be there. They'll be waiting for us on the other side, so to speak. These bonds are not dissolved with the physical body, so to speak. I think it exists well beyond that realm.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that, and my condolences for your
Thank you.
loss. I can feel the love in your words, and I mean, so many teachings there that you just touched upon. And all of this is speaking to me too, because my Chinese zodiac animal is horse. I was born in a horse year, and absolutely, like, my body is definitely not gonna respond to controlling or anything that isn't done or isn't intended with love. Thank you for sharing your bond. That was beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. I too am forced, by the way. And so freedom is something that I greatly value. And I think that they let us borrow their freedom in a lot of ways when we connect with them and bond with them too. So, I mean, their gifts are just, I mean, there's just, I could go on forever.
Yes. Okay, where do I want to go from here? Oh yeah. So one of the things you wrote on your website, I'm just gonna read it because it's so beautiful. You said, I spent 25 years learning all the things I didn't need to know. Then I spent 25 years learning everything I did need to know. I'll spend all my remaining years sharing the wisdom of that journey.
Yeah, and I think we've kind of touched on it a little bit already. So the first 25 years of my life, I spent learning what everybody else thought I needed to know. And in the end, it really wasn't what I needed to know. So then I spent the next 25 years unlearning all of that stuff and learning what I actually needed to know. And that kind of brings me to the point that I'm at in life now, where I really want to share that information, because I know that there are people out there who are, they're struggling through the same kinds of issues that I struggled with. Who am I really, and what do I really want, and why do I feel like this, and how do I get unstuck, and how do I change, and how do I make this different decision when everybody around me is telling me I'm crazy, that kind of thing. And when you're a sensitive, this stuff kind of really, it troubles you. You'd like to think that's not true, but in the end, it really does kind of throw you a little. So I know that there are other folks who are dealing with the same kind of thing. And I, for a long time, thought that there had to be something really wrong with me. And what I found out is that there really was never anything wrong with me. I was always enough, no matter how many times I was told to either sit down and shut up, or that I was not enough, or that I was too much. And then sometimes I'd get told that I was too much and not enough, like in the same sentence, right? So I think that it really comes down to that, really developing that wisdom, that inner wisdom, and that connection to that inner guidance, so that you follow that and kind of block that exterior noise.
Yeah. And how does moon magic help with that? Let's touch upon that a little bit too.
Well, I love, love, love working with the moon. And I think for a lot of folks, the moon is kind of their introduction into the mystical, magical, natural part of the world. Our ancestors have been working with the moon cycles for probably millennia. They planted by the moon, and they could tell the turn of seasons by the moon. They could do a lot of things by timing of the moon. And today we can kind of do the same. We can follow the waxing cycle and the waning cycle, and we can work with the new moon to manifest our wishes, and we can work with the full moon to do some forgiveness work. And working with both actually works as this beautiful synergistic system when we work with both instead of just one or the other. And then we can, launch new projects during the waxing cycle when that moon is growing bigger, so that energy supports them. And we can take the waning cycle when the moon is getting smaller to kind of rest and reflect. And in this way, we kind of almost align ourselves into almost an expanded sense of time, because it works so beautifully when we align. So I think that for a lot of us, when we start to make those connections and we start to make those alignments through the moon, then we find it easier to align with the seasons and the other cycles that happen. And I think that the tough part for us is to align with, nature has a beauty, but she also has a brutality. And for a lot of us, that brutality can be kind of hard to look at. And it sort of is the equivalent of our shadow self, our shadow side, the shadow phase, if you will. So it kind of leads us very gently into exploring our own cycles, our own seasons, when we begin to work with the moon, and then later on, maybe with the seasons and the wheel of the year, as we talked about, how we can really align with those changes and start to see that within ourselves, we can cultivate those seasons and cycles too. No matter what phase we're in, we can always have a new spring through a new beginning, or we can have a dying away like in the fall. We can go into a time of rest like the winter. So all of those things are always available to us, and we can tap into those wonderful energies and bring them into our daily life. And that, I think, is really the true magic, is when we bring all of that in and we start to live it. Like you mentioned earlier, that you can just live being a witch. And I agree with you completely. that is what I too do. I live it, it's not like just reserved for, the 8 points on the wheel of the year or for the new moon and the full moon. It's something I do every day.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yes. And I love your little mini description of the phases of the moon all together. Are there any specific things you notice in you through new moon and full moon? Let's just do the two specifically. For me, as I was telling you, last night was the full moon, and I ended up waking up. I find that it tends to she tends to wake me up quite a bit around full moon, but it was very purposeful. Not going into details, but I ended up journaling and just moving through and processing some things I needed to go through and process. What do you notice happening in your life in those two times specifically?
Well, in the new moon and the full moon, I will see that there's a little difference in me, from cycle to cycle. So you mentioned that you sometimes awaken during the full moon, and I do too. But you know what I think? Excuse me. I always think, how lucky is it that I'm awake at 3 a.m. to see this beautiful moon that's shining through my window, right? I see it as being an opportunity. Now, not always do we love being awake at 3 a.m., but I have, through working with the seasons, the cycles, the moon, all of these things, I've come to this place where I've started to see things differently. So instead of being stuck in traffic as being this thing that I have to endure, I begin to see it as maybe an opportunity. What if being stuck in traffic has actually made it so that I avoid being in an accident? Or what if it is actually happening for me instead of to me? Do you see what I mean? Like, I've started to see these things as opportunities. So when I get these wonky energy things going on during the moon cycle, that's how I've started to see them too. Maybe these are things that are happening for me. And how can I use this? How can I feel into this and understand what the gift for me is in it?
Yeah, I mean, it's become definitely more alive for me since studying astrology deeper too. That duality of having the moon and the sun oppose each other. The sun, your outer reality, and the moon, your inner reality and inner realm, definitely comes up around full moon. And then the opposite, them being together during the new moon, which gives you an opportunity to experience a little bit more unity and possibility that arises from that unity. Um, okay, so I would love to know and find out what your current learning journey is. What is challenging right now, and what are you learning through it? And what's next?
Well, I think that being a student of life, which I definitely call myself that, I don't feel like I'm ever done. Like, there's always something more, something new. Right now, I'm really making a deep dive into plants, and I've always worked with plants, but now I'm making a real effort to work with those that are around my home environment. So if I see a weed pop up that I don't know what it is, I make it so that I do know what it is, and that I can identify it and find out what its uses are. And the interesting thing that has happened with that is that when they pop up, I think, oh, just more weeds, right? It's not. Usually these are plants that have very specific messages that really resonate with me, because once I start doing a little bit of, background work and looking into them, start to see that they have these beautiful messages attached to them that are just the thing I need right now. So that has been my current focus. Now it's winter at the point that we're recording this, so I haven't been doing a lot with it. So I've shifted over to more of a kitchen witchery kind of thing for the winter, to experiment with that and to experiment with those plants a little bit and to get to know them a little bit more and a little bit deeper and in different ways. So right now I'm really looking at going beneath the surface, like going way down and tapping into those deeper wisdoms in the things that grow around me in my environment.
Oh, I love that. It sounds like really tuning into what we've been talking about, hearing what's underneath or within and underneath the message that's within the layers of what we see in our natural world, which just like our bodies always speaks to us in different ways. Karen, thank you so much for being with us. This was an absolute joy. Thank you for sharing your energy, your
Sure.
light. I know that you do offer lots of different courses and programs. Can you tell us a little bit about how people can find you and what they can learn with you?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me be here today. This has been so fantastic. Um, the easiest way to connect with me is through my website, which is ravenwood.com. That's RAVYNWOOD.com. And they can find there a whole page full of like some free goodies. If they want to take a class on working with the moon, I have a moon class that's available for anyone, but it's really meant for the beginner to get them well acquainted with what working with the moon is like. I have one-page guides for the wheel of the year, which are great for popping into your book of shadows or your book of seasons so that you can easily like refer to it and see what's going on. And then the biggest class that I offer is called Raven Wild. So this is a 12-month journey through the wheel of the year. And it's meant to kind of really take that intentional journey, really set aside that time and to work with it in however it feels right for you. So I give everyone a framework, but then the experience will be really unique to them. What do they have in their immediate environment that they begin to start working with? And it's meant to be sort of a catalyst to go deeper and to find those things that are really meaningful to each of them. So that's like, I think, probably the coolest course. You know, I love that course because it's such a wonderful journey to take. And I know what it has meant for me, how much healing I've been able to do, how much um, wisdom has been shared with me from the world around me, from the natural world, whether it's coming from trees or from plants or from landscapes, or from the appearance of animals. A year or so ago, I was like face to face with a bear, and that obviously was a true moment for me. And of course, bear medicine is very powerful for anyone who works with, you know, animal spirit guides and so forth. You know, so there are these things that happen that you can't ever really see coming, that all will inform everyone's journey.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. And I would say to everyone, just to get your energy, they should go to your website and just soak in the beautiful, fairy, rich nature energy. And you have a free gift, which I'm going to post. It's a free class on working with the mystical energies of the moon, a beginner's guide. So people can access that as well. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen.
Oh, thank you so, so much. This has been so fun and so beautiful.
Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to Conversations with Healers. If this episode spoke to you in any way, please leave a review or comment, like or love it, and share it with others in your life. This is a true soul love project from my heart to yours. I really appreciate your help in spreading the word. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and check out other episodes to listen to some extraordinary healing stories and advice. Have a beautiful and wonderful day.